Hey, good morning, good afternoon. Susan Marie Almquist here with Laura Selkin. What a pleasure. Laura, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good. Thanks for having me.
Good. Yeah, super excited today on the topic of mind your own business. And it's funny because I think that phrase is usually used to like say, mind your own business, like stay away. But I don't think that's really the intention that we have here today. And welcome on, Fernando, and others of you that are joining us. Please do feel free to share hello, maybe your name and where you're joining us from. We really also, Laura and I, want to be involving you as the audience and participants as much as possible. So here we are, mind your own business, not in the way that maybe people typically think of that phrase, but it's almost like if you were really truly minding your business and freeing your mind to do things like, what would that look like? I mean, is that what the topic, well, how does it speak to you, Laura? Maybe just out of the gate, you could talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I like this title because it's kind of a play on words. And it's like you said, your initial you think, well, mind your own business. But then if you think deeper about it, if you're running a business, you need to be mindful of your business and how you're running it. But I think it's a little of both, because sometimes to be mindful of your own business means to shut out and turn off other stuff that isn't making you better, isn't making you being mindful of your own business, because there's so many distractions. And so sometimes I really kind of think it is mind your own business. You worry about you. And I always say, this is maybe a little off topic, but I'm a mother first and foremost. I have 4 children. And the advice that I always give new moms is, don't listen to everybody else. You be the best mom you can be, and don't let everyone else, their judgments, their advice, you get a lot of unsolicited advice as a mother. And I've always told people, just tune that out. And I think that's true with business owners too. Someone's like, oh, you own your own business, you have a small business, and they have all this advice for you, all these things that you should do, all these things that you shouldn't do. And I'll really take that in, but I think you have to, that you're trying to create, and just always be mindful of that in everything that you do, and all the decisions that you make, and the partnerships that you make, and who you bring onto your business, clients and employees or contractors. It all really matters. And so I love the play on words of it, because I think it's a little of both.
Oh, I love that. And the analogy of the advice that you give to moms, boy, I can certainly appreciate that, being a mom of a beautiful blended family of 6 kids myself. So, and there is a little bit of that almost parenting, right, to business ownership. And actually, I'd like to hear a little bit more about you here out of the gate, Laura, and your background. I know you're mentioning being a mom. But what else kind of has led you to this conversation that we're going to have today? I know you serve as the Chief Experience Officer at MyCore. What led you to that? I'd love to hear from you a bit about that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, for me, my background, again, I always say I'm a mother first and foremost. That's really who I am. But I've had many jobs throughout my career, right out of college, through working part-time, having children, because, something had to give. So my career was what I was willing to give when I was raising my children, and then jumping back into the job market. And I think the common thread throughout that, because I've worked for small companies, big companies, nonprofits, you name it, I've worked there. And my background's in HR and benefits, it's kind of where my background is. And I think the thread that I could say was constant through all of the job that I've had in my career has just been the people aspect. And either it was something that was important to the organization that I was working for or with, or it was something that was just always important to me that I was bringing to that organization. And I think what brought me to MyCore, and why I get up every day and think about it constantly and want to be part of it, is that I feel like here's where I can fully embrace who I am and my idea of what it means to be people-centric, and really bring it to life. Like, I feel like I can make a difference. And because we work with other small business owners, I feel like I can kind of weave that into everything that I do, and I can help them to live that out too. And so for me, that's very fulfilling because I believe in people, and I think that they're just the center of everything. And no matter what technology comes our way, um, AI is kind of the big hot topic now that everyone's talking about. You can never ever replace human beings. We are unique, we're created uniquely. And I just think that no matter how far we try to stray from that, and small business owners try to DIY it, really deep down, I think that human connection and having good people surrounding us will never go away, because it's literally built into who we are. And so that's what really led me to my course. I felt like I could really make a difference, and it's kind of fun to be, be on the ground level and to be able to help create something that it shouldn't be that unique, but we're finding it is very unique in how you go to market and how we treat and work and service towards our customers.
Wow. No kidding. Laura, I can only imagine that some people might be listening to you like, oh, I'd like to have Laura Selkin at my company. Well, too bad she's here at my core. We are so lucky to have her, and really excited to be here with you today, Laura. I'm just want to say to those of you in the chat again, a welcome to all of you. Be sure that when you're posting, you actually have two options you'll see in your drop down. It'll say host and panelists, or everyone. I just want to encourage everyone to click everyone if it's something that you want to say to everybody, like when you're welcoming yourselves or saying hello, and if you have questions or comments. But I think that the experience side of the house that you serve, Laura, it's almost like you could say sales and service, but it's experience. That everything that you were describing as your background has got to be things that you get to draw from as you're bringing service to clients at my core. And at the beginning, you were saying that this topic of mind your own business in a way really is maybe saying, yeah, mind your own business, like stay away so I can mind mine. And I'm just curious as to what that's looked like for you in some instances. Like, have there been some clients who have shared with you, like, if I could only free myself up, what I would really like to do is X or Y or Z? And what have been some of those examples? Because I think if people can really be freed up to their highest and best use, it's like transformational.
Yeah, I think a common statement we get from our clients is, it's because I always love learning, and this is part of the reason why I love my core too, is we get to be kind of step into other companies every single day and kind of be in their world, learn what they do. And I've always just been, I love lots of different things. And I'm always curious about what people do and how do they do it. And there's things I'm like, wow, I didn't even know someone had to make that. And I love that part of it. But one thing is, everyone went into business because either they're really super good at what they do, or they saw a need in the market and they knew they could fulfill that, and they wanted that freedom of, being their own boss. But then they get into it, and there's just a whole lot more than they thought to running a business.
And the business owns them, right?
Right, exactly. And they were kind of trading time for money, and then their business, they're realizing, I mean, just how precious time is. And some of the things that they loved about starting their business, they're finding themselves not even able to do anymore because they're so bogged down with the necessities of a business. And I think I explained it to you the other day when we were chatting, is like, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like if you don't have food and somewhere and shelter, and you can't think beyond that to bigger things, dreams and aspirations, and wondering, oh, what must it like be in other places of the world, whatever, you don't have that luxury when your basic needs aren't met. And I think business owners fall into that too. They're like, well, I have to make sure that we have money coming in. And when we have that money, I got to figure out, okay, where's it going out? Who's getting it? Do I have money to buy certain things? Now I got to get employees. Can I afford an employee? How do I deal with that employee? How do I welcome into the company? All of those things are very important. And sometimes they get sucked into those tasks of a company. It's not like something that you can ignore, because if you ignore, then the company will cease to exist. And then your whole purpose for starting it. So I see that all the time. I mean, just the other day we were talking to a business owner. Actually, it happened twice. One was like a lawnmower company, And the other was he deals with like colleges, going out to colleges and helping them build out their marketing. And both of them said, I need to get back out in the field and be selling. That's what I'm good at. That's what I like to do. But I'm getting sucked into all this other stuff. And that has to happen too. And so they're trying to do both things. And most business owners are super smart people and competent and able to multitask, if that's really a thing. And they think, well, if I'm minding my own business, that means I am doing it all myself. DIY. There's so many tools out there that I can just do it all myself. And I think that works maybe for a while, but we're not superhuman either. And there comes a point where you just have a breakdown where it's just too much. And you're trying to manage too much and you don't have that work-life balance that you were really hoping to have by owning your own business and not answering to someone else. But like you said, now you're answering to your business. And so by us being able to work with companies and help them with some of those things that are very important to their business, like if be it accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, benefits, the HR things, we're able to take some of that stuff, not really, we don't work in their business as an employee or even a temp person, but we're able to advise them. We're like our people advisor is our title. And we're able to help them to slow down that learning curve, to make it help them really take their processes, take the things they're doing and kind of break it apart and figure out, okay, what are the things that will continue to be on your end? What are some of the things that we can help tighten up? And just have it more streamlined. And then they know, and this is the part that I think I love, and I'll ask you guys a question and you guys put it in the chat, what you think. But have you ever called into a customer service line and you get in that endless, I mean, all of them are IA driven. I don't even know if any of them are real people anymore. Have you ever gotten that loop where press 1 for this, press 2 for that? And you're like, I just have a question that I want to just ask a real human being. And I want them to tell me yes or no. It's not super complicated. It won't even take them a lot of work, but I just want to run it past a human. And you press 0 like a million times to hopefully get to the customer service rep. That to me, like now knowing what we do for our clients, I want that for me. I want a people advisor to help me in my life when I have questions about things that I can just speed down, go, hey, what do you think? What's your experience? What do you know? What you know? Who do you know? Having that one person is so powerful because we waste so much time trying to figure out who should I call for that. And then trying to figure out, if someone gives you an advice, well, this is the person that I refer, like, is that, so tell me guys in the chat, if you've ever had that where you've called into a place, you've had really good customer service. This has happened to me like at Verizon, where half the time people don't really go beyond the basics to help you. When someone goes above and beyond, I'm like, I am writing down their name. And every time I call, that is who I want to talk to. That's my person. And then you keep calling that person and they're like, Laura, that's not my role. That's not how we do things here. And maybe I'm not even in that department. I'm like, I know, but you're my person. Like, I want you to be my person. I'd be curious to see if people have like done that too, or am I just crazy and attached to people?
I don't think you are. There's feedback right now coming in, Laura, about people are encountering it all the time. Or somebody says it's more like customer disservice. It's become more the norm, right? I think just as you're saying, as AI kind of takes over, it's like finding your way to an actual human being does become the exception. And I get that it's more of what is so distinguishing about MyCore. And in part, you are embodying that, right? Just like we were saying at the beginning, I'm sure everybody would want a Laura Sulkin, right? You want somebody who's feeling passionate about their work and that is able to bring to other people the same thing that we want, right? It's like do unto others what we'd like to have done to us, really, is what I see you embodying that. People are talking about that it happened to them even just this morning. And that oftentimes people will cancel. They're writing about that too in the chat, Laura. They won't even to continue to do business with somebody who is not providing the kind of service that you want. And it's tough, right? Because you see that people struggle to, when they're in business, and to feel like they can do actually that which they got into business to do. And it does it like stops you from even being able to feel that passion that got you there in the first place, or to be able to be people centric, right? It's like, whereas with my core, our mission actually is to be the world's most people centric company. So you're really speaking to that in the way in which we can have customer service brought to life, and not just something where people are in a different country or with AI, like I see some in the chat right here. And it really is something you tend to take pride in. And I see that's what you're talking about, Talene, if I'm saying your name right, I hope.
Well, and that's another thing too, when you mentioned that about employee centric, a lot of our clients too, like we hear a kind of a common thing. They're really, especially in the job market right now, it's hard to find people, and it's hard to find good people. I was just talking to a client this morning, and they said that it's not even a problem. They're having a problem hiring people. They get people, they set up an interview, and then they don't show. Like, that's how bad it is that people don't even show up for an interview that they agreed to be on. I mean, I remember back in the day, if you got an interview, you were like, oh my gosh, they're going to let me interview with them. And it's, the job market is so very different. The employer is trying to attract the employee, but the employee is trying to attract the employer. It's both ways. It really used to be the employer had all the power. And now employees are kind of like posturing and like, well, maybe I won't even show up for the interview. And so I think companies are aware of that, and they're starting to want to work on their culture. And again, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, culture is not food or shelter. I mean, it should be, but it's not. People aren't putting that time in at the beginning because they're trying to get their widgets made. They're trying to figure out if they have enough. They're focusing on the what's, not the who's, which culture is all about. So that's another thing with clients I try to work with them on. And it's really a mindset thing, because culture isn't like you just go out and you buy a little package of culture and then you like stick it on your shelf or put it in your handbook, or it's so much more than that. And it's again, to go back to the child analogy, not only is your business like a child, but fostering culture in your business is like a teenage child. It's volatile, right? It's always going to challenge you. There's going to be people that like it and people that don't like it. I mean, culture it's a everyday thing that you constantly have to be focusing on. And again, do business owners, because we really love to work with small business owners, big businesses are great, but I really think that our country was based on people having small businesses. I don't want them to get all enveloped into the big businesses. And so what we do every day is hoping that we can keep them alive and keep them healthy, great places for people to work. We all spend a whole lot of time at work. And we want everyone to have that, to have the passion that we feel about where we work and what we're building. We want everyone to feel that way at work. It doesn't matter what you do, and that's where like customer service, I get a little frustrated when I call into places and I'm like, I don't care what you do. You could be my garbage collection company that comes and picks up my garbage. Garbage has to be picked up. It's very important. Imagine our world if we didn't, and when I witness people who have passion for what they do and just serving others, no matter what they do, that inspires me. And I love when I see that out in the world. And I always say something to someone like, thank you so much for going above and beyond, because I know you don't have to, so yeah,
I love what you're saying. I mean, my core is not like a culture building company, but Laura, what you're describing is almost like by way of being who you are, you're able to help clients kind of consider that too. And I know that you're embodying almost like our values too as a company, which we speak about. And I don't know, maybe put in the chat if that's something that you guys have also felt is common, is to hear businesses that speak to their values, that even have values. And what I hear you doing right now, Lars, is almost speaking to them without speaking of them, right? This whole idea of, we have three, right? Walking by faith, which in a sense is what you're describing too. And you're building culture. It can feel risky. Like it's maybe not in this hierarchy of needs, but like you could die without it too. So walking by faith, that is the most important thing to tend to, right? We talk about leading with who, which is really what Laura's embodying here too, in terms of right bringing that people culture, leading with people and helping people, value people, right? Just really leaning into that is who we are at my core. And I see that some of you are speaking about that too, Fernando, and some of your comments about a successful company, that people is their first priority, but that's so often not the case. And then our last one is measure what matters. And I know as a company that it's easy to, as we get caught up in culture, and as important as it is, we don't want to lose track of the bottom line too. And it seems like my course doing a good balance of that, Laura, and I feel like that's really what you're speaking to in a way here right now.
Yeah.
So how do you see this? Yeah, go ahead.
The whole values thing, and you made me think of when I think about our clients. And I think sometimes people they take business ownership 101 and it says, okay, you have to values, you have to have a mission statement, and they do that, but a whole lot of them, they never look at it, because I think when you decide on what your values are and you put them out in the world's going to hold you accountable to them. And I think that's very scary for people to do, because you're kind of like, oh, maybe we're not living up to our values. Maybe we're not checking in on our values. And so I think that's another thing that business owners kind of struggle with, is they don't do it because they're scared to be held up to it, but yet they don't realize that that's what attracts people to your company most often. My daughter, she's actually at an interview today with the company, and the things she told me, she internshiped with them for the last 2 years, and she would tell me things that the company does. And I just said, Eve, they have a good culture. I love their culture. And that's huge. And not all companies are good at that. And so I just expressed to her how important that is. And after interviewing at other places, it became very apparent to her company with a really strong culture looks like, and one that doesn't have a strong culture. And she just innately is more drawn to the one with a strong culture. And I think that's true of most people, if they're being honest, that we kind of don't know what it was. Like I was in that interview and I can't place my finger on what it was that made me just not see myself working there. And this is before any compensation is spoken about, any of that. It's just a gut feeling that you get. And I think that's what it is that have they really thought about what they want their culture and their values to be? And with people like that, walk by faith, lead with who. I feel like those are things that, I don't know, I grew up, my mother always told me, don't tell someone, show someone. And it should be apparent through your actions and how you treat others, what your values are. You shouldn't have to tell them that you're a Christian. They should know by the way you treat people. It should be apparent. The words shouldn't always have to be used. But the measure what matters makes me think about, and this is where the HR side of me comes in, is think about that term HR. It used to be called personnel way back in the day. Some of you might remember those days. Personnel seems a little bit more not personal, and even though it has the word person in it, but it seems like more of a commodity. Human resources is recognizing that humans are working for you. And when you measure what matters, it's tough when you're, and then know this, if you're going out to companies, no matter what it is that you might be marketing them, and you're talking to that HR person, they are constantly trying to show their value to the CFO in the company. And guess what? People aren't that easy to measure monetarily. Yes, salary you can measure monetarily, but how do you measure in money terms the value that somebody brings in their attitude, in their, how they build your culture? You can't. And so it's always this constant battle between the money and the people, the humans that you have in your company. And just know that companies are always dealing with that balancing act. And so to measure what matters, you have to sit down and figure out what really matters. And that's too where when we come in and can kind of help them streamline things. So there's another thing people overlook is time is money. And when business owners are spending so much time doing accounting and bookkeeping and payroll and trying to manage the benefits and all that, they should be figuring out how many hours, what am I worth per hour? And how many hours am I spending on that? So then rather than saying, well, what would it cost for me to go out and get this streamlined or get an advisor to help me? What is it already costing me? And I'll give you one example, and then I'll let you go to the chat and see what people's experiences are. But we just talked with a client she's an artist. She paints. And I went on her website and looked at what she paints. Like, she is very creative and spends time painting. And when we talked to her about her bookkeeping and her payroll, she was very proficient at that. Even though I know dang well that someone who's that good at painting, it's probably not their superpower. But she's a smart girl and she's figuring it out. But I said, wouldn't you rather be painting than like doing your books every month? She goes, oh, absolutely. But I have to know where my business is, because she's making a business out of her passion. And I just love that she was like, I need someone to come in. And it's hard for me to let go because I want to hold on to everything. But she was willing to kind of, lessen up on that grip. And she's letting us in. And that's so satisfying when we know that she can get back to what she's just created by God to do, is create these marvelous works of art. So
Yeah,
it's fun.
So exciting, isn't it? And just to imagine people, again, that idea of being able to contribute their superpower, their highest and best use in life. And Laura, I hearken back to when you said that it's almost like you could use a people advisor, like each of us could use a people advisor in life. And now once you kind of get hip to that term of what it means and having that kind of access, it does feel like we would all want it in like every aspect of our life. Just that ability to have somebody like Alara or one of her team, right? The experienced team at MyCore who's able to like come alongside. Like, I'd love to hear from you guys more in the chat. Like, what have you seen in your own businesses or in your lives where if you could have somebody come alongside and maybe even just have some of the conversations like Laura and I are having about your business or their businesses, in what ways could they be freed up? Like, what would that look like? Catherine, I see what you said there about a life advisor, right? It's what it starts to feel like. And then what I feel like happens is that trust builds. And when you have trust with someone, it frees you up to be able to explore all sorts of other things, whether it's culture, like we're talking about in part here right now, or whether it's your art work that Laura's describing, or some of the other clients she was talking about earlier wanted to be freed up to get back to sell because they love what they do. They wanted to be able to sell it and bring it to their community. And it is often like it's an opportunity cost, is really like Fernanda's writing about here too, Laura, that you were describing, where if you could assess that trade-off, right, as an owner of your time not doing those things that you want to or maybe should be doing, is typically huge. But we lose touch. We lose touch and we don't know that there could be any other way. I think that's oftentimes what happens. And I just love the examples that you're giving, Laura, of clients and ways in which we can kind of do that, free them up. I see here that Brittany's writing about when something goes wrong and the house team has to focus on the issue and then other things get put aside. I mean, having this people advisor, it's just amazing, that idea of how you could kind of, in a sense, like partner with them, like, what should I do? Or can you help me with this? Or then that becomes a person that you know to call, like you were describing. We all wish that we had that one person that we could call.
Well, and I think in bigger companies, like I have a lot of neighbors that work for some of the like really big companies like United Healthcare and Medtronics and Target, and they work for huge companies, and I hear all the resources and things that they have at their fingertips, and they probably do have a people advisor. I bet Target Corp does have people advisors for, and what happens is smaller companies, the mom and pops, the Main Street companies, which again, that's who we serve, they kind of get left out. They kind of get treated like a second-rate citizen. We're like, well, companies don't want to touch them because it's not this huge expense and huge paycheck for them. And we're quite the opposite. We break things down into very simple terms as far as what our subscription rates are, but we're not cookie cutter. We're very boutique and very meet you where you're at and help you with things that might not even be on our list. I mean, to be quite honest. And it's because we just have a passion for small businesses, and we know that they have the same problems that big companies do. They just don't have access to the resources to get the help. And so we want to change that. It shouldn't have to be that way. And there's plenty of people that want to work for small companies in their own community. In these small towns all over the country wouldn't exist if there weren't small businesses to support the people that live there. So it's much bigger. It's much bigger than what we do on a day-to-day basis.
It is. What you're describing, I feel like it's able to keep it's like our heritage as a country alive. And I know myself, and probably others of you out there, I'll go out of my way to support small business. I know recently I was hosting an event, and I could have easily gone to the local supermarket to get the pastries and the things that we were serving, but I went out of my way to get feedback from a community on a recommendation, which I actually did on a Facebook group. I got a recommendation to a place. I researched it. I went there to support that business. And I actually introduced myself to the owner to let them know that I was excited that I was referred to them and that I was going out of my way to support that business. Because I wanted, it's like then it becomes this whole conversation of how we can all be a support to one another. And it creates kind of that web, right, of Main Street America. And
well, and to go back to the parenting thing, this is really lining up wonderfully. If you've ever with kids, it takes a village to raise kids, right? Like it takes a village to run a small business. They have to up and support one another, and that's too where like it just creates this wonderful network of people that like once you've helped a company and they know the value of it, then they can refer you to the business down the street, and then you're helping them, and it's we're really all in this together. No one was meant to be in an island by themselves. And so that's what I like about it too. And working in the small business space is that you feel like you're just building a good community of people. And I say it as this, but I collect my favorite people, and everywhere I've worked, everywhere I shop, I have favorite people. And maybe that's not fair, but that's just how it is. I have my favorite people, and I think everyone kind of has that. They want to feel like there's people that they really care about, and they also want to feel cared about from other people. And that's what this whole thing is. That's what it creates and supports.
So that they get you, right? We all want those people that get us and that we get them. That was just some great remarks there, Laura. And you're making me think of one of
the on here. You mentioned her, Talene. I met her. It's random, but not random. Is me and Julie were sitting at a table, and we were the first people down to breakfast, and Talene and her colleague sat down at our table just randomly. But it's not random. We were meant to meet, and now we adore each other and are supportive of each other's businesses, and it just is what it is. We just clicked. And it's funny how then that whole time that we were there, we kept running into each other. It's like we're in the same circles, and I think everyone's just kind of looking for their circle of favorite people.
Oh gosh, I love that. It is so. I look forward to getting to know you, Talene, as well. And I see my husband has piped up in here that he didn't start his business 30 years ago to do those types of things either, the bookkeeping, the payroll, all that kind of thing. And that leads me to one of the jumping off points I wanted to draw from in a bit today here with you, Laura, is this article that I read in Forbes magazine about how it was talking about payroll in particular. And it was saying, if you're looking for payroll services, because here's what I learned when you're talking about business, it's like as soon as you bring in $1 to your business, like really we need to be accountable to that dollar and track it and have accounting and bookkeeping, which is part of why MyCore does that. And then you typically are going to bring on employees and have to have payroll. And the article was talking about that oftentimes that's not the kind of thing you're going to want to handle yourself. I mean, I know a lot of businesses do. They start that way because we don't know otherwise. Actually, I didn't even understand. And my background's as a lawyer, but I didn't understand that payroll was like the kind of thing you could essentially outsource. Right. So in other words, you don't have to do it yourself because it is complex. Mm-hmm. And you're like you talked about in business to do whatever it is that you got into business to do. So the first thing it was talking about was with respect to payroll. There were like these couple of things I wanted to ask you about, Laura, in terms of kind of like what MyCore brings to life with payroll with respect to this article. But the first thing it asked was, what kind of customer service can I expect? And isn't that interesting? Because you're talking about the ways in which you want to find your people and be of service to them. And that was the first thing that they talked about. Like most of the time, you want to be actually asking about that outright. And so maybe you've already addressed this, but is there anything else you want to say about customer service in the context of payroll? It almost sounds like an oxymoron. Like, yeah. Isn't it all about numbers?
Well, and that's a really good point, because people look at payroll, they go out to market to find a solution, and they look at it as a commodity. I'm going to just line them up, and I'm going to go to the lowest price, or I'm going to go to the biggest company, or whatever it might be. And they look at it as a commodity, but, and maybe it is for some people. If you're one of those people, I'm not, that when you read the entire instruction manual, whenever you buy something, and you read it front to back, like let's say you bought a car. If anybody puts this in the chat, I need to meet you if you've literally read the whole manual to a car. I use it as an index. If something goes wrong, then I look up that problem. But some people do that. And then go for it. You can read the tax code if you want. You can do that. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of people probably don't have the time, even if they'd like to do that, or are like me, where you're like, I'm just going to like dive in and trial and error, like put it together. I could see a picture. I see what it's supposed to look like. I can figure this out. But I think the value of good customer service is there's always going to be bumps. There's always going to be things that come up. There always will be. If someone promises you that it's just going to be no problem, seamless, it'll be perfect, they are lying. They're lying, because that doesn't exist. The world is full of errors, human errors, computer errors, just stuff happens. That's how it works. And I think the most valuable customer service that you can provide is just being there for someone and being quick to respond to them when they have questions. And so for me, that's just what it's all about. It's just, if you know you can't get to something, I always tell my team, if you can't get to it right away, just shoot them a message telling them, got your message, I'm working on it, I'll get back to you tomorrow. Just acknowledge that they exist and that you got their message. And oftentimes, sometimes we expect things that we don't ourselves do. And it's like, think about it. Yeah, everyone has emails that might get lost, or a voicemail that you miss. Like, that's human nature. And don't think anybody else is going to be any different than you. But good customer service is just honestly just being there and helping people navigate the problems that inevitably will happen. So that's a huge thing.
And it's not having all the answers. I love, you actually reminded me of my training as a lawyer, because as a lawyer, you don't know all those laws. You haven't memorized the laws, just like at MyCore, you haven't like memorized the tax code or how all that works. It's that we know how to look it up. We know how to find the answer, or in what you're describing, how to be responsive, and being responsive so that somebody knows you're there with them, building that trust. Like, that is customer service. And I think that also having that single point of contact, like Laura talks about, having somebody who's dedicated just to you, was something actually the article talked about too. And I think it's pretty unique to part of what MyCore brings. Has that been the case as you've seen it too, Laura?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Yeah, I mean, again, if you're talking about cost, what's the cost? What's the cost of waiting on hold for 30, 40 an hour? Ever tried to call the IRS? They're not exactly like picking up the phone very often. Um, yeah, there's cost to everything. And I think that's one thing where we're really like realizing that people they want to have that person, and it frees them up to do, other things. Plus the learning curve, like you were saying, we might not always know the answer. I know enough to where like, oh, we might want to dig into that a little bit further. That could be a problem. Like kind of catching things before they happen. You're not going to get that with a lot of places. You're calling in, they're never calling out to you. And so what we really try to kind of up the game is being aware of what's going on and anticipating things that could go wrong and then jumping on it ahead of time. And again, measuring what matters. Sometimes that's a hard thing to measure, because if they didn't have to go through the pain of it, they don't even know what you saved them from having to endure. But we just take pride in being that and being there for our clients.
You're really talking about a high touch kind of environment. And I know that sometimes we compromise if we have high touch and don't also have, you might say, high tech. And actually, the second of the three things from that article that I wanted to hit on from Forbes was, if you're looking at a payroll solution as a small business owner, the first was about customer service, but the next one is their technology in step with current trends? And kind of that balance between the high touch and high tech can be really hard to pull off. So tell me about that, Laura, at MyCore, just your perspective on how that works.
Yeah, definitely. And it kind of brings in a couple of things we talked about, like attracting the workforce right now, whether we want to, acknowledge it or not. Older people are retiring and not working anymore, and younger people are coming into the workforce, and they're not the same. It's not the same. They expect a different experience. And technology is part of that. It makes you more efficient, for one. So it really is a time save, but it also gives a different experience. Like, I think if my daughter was at this job interview and they wanted her to literally take a pen and write out paperwork, I think she would look at him like, are we for real right now? Like, are we really doing this? Like, they really would think that we're crazy. And so, I mean, some of it is just like, you have to get with the times, whether you want to or not, you're going to have to. And I think what I love too, is that we're able to help them with that technology. It's not something that we took a company that was very, very, I don't even know what year you could say that. There might have been in 1942, maybe 50. And we brought them up to the, 21st century. And we were able to just kind of realize that change is hard, but technology doesn't have to be something that is so daunting for them to take on. And so we really help them with that and utilizing it and educating their staff. Natalia, who's on my team, I was just sharing this with another client too, because she's like, well, our team's not super techie. And I said, let me tell you, Natalia has trained and she's so patient and spent time with clients that, let me tell you, they're lower than not technology, sound. So trust me, with enough patience and kindness surrounding it, not just dumping it in their lap, anyone can really learn this. So it's been really fun working with the clients that are open-minded enough to make that shift.
And again, to not have to do it alone, which is really what you're describing, right? I mean, it's one thing if you buy it. My husband, as he wrote here in the chat earlier, had a business for 30 plus years, and he would buy software and then it would just sit there and he'd never do anything with it, because there's a learning curve, right, that goes with that typically. But if you have somebody, just like we've been talking about, kind of alongside you, that's like bringing that tech to life, well, then you might actually get the value out of it, actually exponentially, because they're helping you along the way, kind of bringing that to life. And I see here that Fernando is writing about just how complex like payroll compliance can be. And that's, I think, too, part of when you've got good tech, that it's going to build in some of that compliance so that it takes it off the minds of our clients. Is that what you've seen too, Laura, in terms of like compliance and
Yeah,
the way
absolutely.
tech help?
I'm shocked sometimes when I talk to people and they have, and now too, that now that a lot of people are working remotely, more companies are dealing with being in multiple states. And every state, a little civics lesson, the United States of America, every state's like its own little country. They have their own laws, they have their own rules, they have their own government. Like, and so you're stepping into foreign countries, more or less, trying to figure out how they run things from one central place. And I'm always amazed when people are doing it, trying to figure out taxes on their own, the math of it, and then how do you submit it? Every state's different. I would not want to do that. And it's not necessary. So yeah, absolutely. Technology is huge. And anyone that's not, and even if accountants are doing it, a lot of it's still very manual. I don't think it's the best use of time, for sure.
I think you're absolutely right. I find a lot of businesses that are still been doing this, right? Keeping their books like that, writing checks. And I know that like our last webinar topic, old habits can die hard. But I think that also having that support, just like you were describing about helping a company modernize, it can be painful. But if you're not doing it alone, at least it's tolerable.
Well, and then that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're not, sometimes you just keep doing things the way you're doing it because it's working. And I don't have time. I don't have time to think about that. I don't have time to change it. I don't have time to improve this. And because you're imagining doing it by yourself.
Right.
And that's where we can kind of open people's minds. Like, you don't have to do it by yourself. We'll work together. We'll figure it out. I have clients, just a couple recently, that they know they have to hire somebody, but they're not quite sure for what and what skills they need. And I'm like, let's figure out what you got here, get it organized. I kind of feel like I'm almost like what's that show where they'd help people throw things away or like clear out their clutter?
Oh, declutter, right.
Yeah, I almost feel like I'm kind of like a business declutterer. Like, I help them figure out what's necessary, what's not, where can we put some solutions in here. And then once all the dust settles, and I always say, okay, so either you have a person on staff that, what do they like to do? What do they want to do? Then let's move that stuff over to them, and then we can help find solutions for the stuff that they don't. Or if you're going to hire, at least now you've narrowed down who you need to hire and what skills you're looking for, instead of just like throwing it out there and getting someone who is not gonna be good at it, or it's not gonna be their superpower, what they want to do. So all of that is stuff that we can kind of help people advise them on. And then long term, we're there for them no matter what. Things change, people move on or get let go or whatever, and we can help train new people because now we know how your business runs. So we really kind of are like a business declutter company.
I like that. And how you can remain the constant, right? So even if one of our clients has a point of contact and that person has to leave, we can be their constant, right? That helps that new person is what I hear you describing. And another interesting remark here in the chat, Laura, that Matthew Saxton wrote about, that it's common knowledge that like the SaaS idea, software as a service, like people buying software as like the solution. But really what you're describing, Laura, at my core is more like flipping that on its head, like service as a software, right? In terms of like bringing it to life for a business owner so that you can have high tech and high touch.
Yep, exactly. Because like you said with Curtis and buying software and sitting on the shelf, I cannot tell you how common that is. It's like they were up in the middle of the night watching those infomercials, and you buy stuff that you're like, I don't know why I bought that. I must have, like, they caught me, I was sleep deprived. But yeah, like the important thing is to have the technology and to utilize it to its fullest and to fit it into how your company works. And most often, a lot of those software companies, they might have a little bit of tech support, but sometimes you don't even know the questions to ask. Like, you're so out of your element that you don't even, they'll go, well, do you have any questions? And you're like, no. Well, you don't even know that you have questions because you're so far gone from knowing how to implement it. So those are the kind of the things that, we really like to help people bring to life. They can save money that way. Maybe there's some stuff that just get rid of this. You don't need it. You're not using it.
Well, and in the spirit of that declutter concept, I like that, Laura, or somebody said hoarders, helping people not be hoarders.
Exactly.
Is that the last question? The last question of this article I wanted you to speak to, and it kind of is a good note to kind of wrap up on too, is that to ask, if you're looking at solutions, if a service provider can do more than just payroll. And maybe you could speak to that, Laura, as we kind of close out, because I think once you've aligned yourself with someone and you're like, okay, this is really good, I've got payroll kind of chugging along, and then you realize, well, maybe you need other things, how nice it would be to be able to be in that same kind of ecosystem to get those solutions.
Yeah, and that's kind of twofold, I think. The nice thing that the payroll solution that we utilize with our clients is also an HRIS system. And maybe that term isn't even used anymore, but it means human resource information system. There's got to be a place where you house everything for your employees. And this includes all of that. It includes the whole onboarding experience and keeping the documents. So some of you may or may not know this, but the W-4 and the I-9 that you get when somebody hires, you have to keep those for a certain amount of time. Don't even ask me to tell you exactly how long, because it's one of those typical government laws where it's like, well, if this, then this, but if this, then that. And it's literally like, okay, I'll just keep them forever. But think about the information you're keeping forever. It's got someone's social or passport, and it's like very valuable information that you have to protect. I don't want to keep that in my, in my file cabinet, in my home office or whatever. So it's from that all the way up to, signing their handbook and the whole experience of being an employee there, even having access to their information. So you're not even being called all the time for data that they could actually change themselves, look up themselves. It's really like empowering the employees to be part of their own employee experience. And I think people also vacillate, and sometimes they're like, well, I'm going to get something that's like everything's all built into this one system. And what we know is every company starts with a flagship product. That's like this is what we do. We are a payroll company, and we know everything about every tax law in the history of payroll tax laws. Back to the 1930s, we know them all. Okay, great. And then they start adding on all these other pieces, but the other pieces are not, they're not that great. They're not working that great. And so some people, that's kind of their natural inclination if they get the idea, like, I want it to all be, integrated all together. But they're not necessarily getting the best in each vertical. And what we try to bring to life for our clients is finding the best in each vertical. Oftentimes they can be integrated, but they're not all one thing that bought as one lump thing, because we're kind of taking the flagship products of each of the best and bringing it together so that to the employees and to the employer, it seems like it's a one-stop shop. But behind the scenes, we're like that duck under the water where our feet are going crazy, and but that's just smoothly sailing across the water. So
Great
that's
vision.
another thing too, that sometimes I think people think they're being super smart and they're getting, yep, I'm just going to add all that on with, whatever payroll company, whatever initials you want to use. And sometimes they're really forgoing a great tech and personal experience that they could be offering to themselves and their employees.
Yeah, I actually love the mobile app that the employees use through our payroll. I get a lot of compliments I hear about that. So isn't it true, Laura? And again, just kind of quickly here as we wrap up, as someone's growing as a business and they're wanting to not just do payroll, but maybe then offer benefits, or maybe they have HR or legal issues, how is that handled inside of many solutions, or MyCore in particular?
Yeah, we build all that in because, and that's another thing, like you said, once someone's ready to add benefits, and usually it starts with either they themselves want them, or they're trying to bring on a new employee who asks about them, and then they're like, oh, we don't really have that. We better. And so they want to add on that experience. But what I see, and this is an age-old problem, is companies spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort bringing on benefits, and the employees don't even understand them. My oldest got his very first real job a number of years ago. And this is like a medium-sized company that he works for. And he got like 28 email attachments. That was his benefit
Oh,
experience.
oh gosh.
He didn't even know, like when kids get their first job, I mean, they barely know that you have to pay for garbage to come pick up at your house or pay for water. Like they don't know what any of these benefits are. And so what we really try to bring to life within our clients is taking over some of those pieces to be to really educate. And that's really what we want to do with everything that we do, is really educate our clients, and then with the employees, educate them on the value of what they have. Like what is this that you have? Are you utilizing it? And even we can be the ones that can be, share with them the cost. Sometimes an employer, it might seem awkward to have to keep reminding them, you do know we pay 50% of that. It's kind of too late once they've quit and they get COBRA and they realize, oh my gosh, this is expensive. And you're like, yeah, your employer was paying that, so we can kind of be that third party to bring value to that employer too, so that we can say your employer is really investing a lot of money in you, offering these benefits, and you get us, because we're gonna educate you, and we're gonna help you if you have bumps in the road with claims or whatever it might be. And really with benefits, the world is different now. You can't just purchase your benefits. You have to be a consumer of your benefits and really know how to work the system. It really is now about trying to be of your benefits within utilizing it. So we help bring that to life. And then HR, very broad term, but employee handbooks are all obviously very important for employers to have, because it just lays down the groundwork of what's the company about, what are some of the guidelines, and it's something to kind of lean up against if you find that people aren't following things. And it's important to have that in place. And then we just help them, guide them if they were terminating people. Again, the state thing, terminating people in different states can mean different things. How you have to handle their last paycheck, documents that you actually have to provide them about unemployment insurance and things like that. How in the world is a business owner going to keep track of all that and the latest laws? So we help them, guide them in that too. So it's really nice to get in there and just make sure that they can just rest easy on their pillow every night, knowing I don't know all the answers, but I got my person, and I can call them if I have one, and they'll go to work with me. And again, to minding your own business, it doesn't mean you just let it, hand it off to MyCore and we take it from there. You still have to be an active participant in your own life. But we will be an active participant with you, not for you, but with you. So it's really the best of both worlds. And it's just been really fun to bring it all to life.
Oh my gosh, Laura, it's been a pleasure having you here today. And we're just so privileged really to have you at MyCore, bring all of who you are to our clients, you and your team. And there may be some of you on here right now that have questions about MyCore or just solutions out there generally. And I just invite you to, you probably were invited here by somebody today, and get back with them. You can always schedule a demo of about 30 minutes to kind of answer questions or run through things. And even if Laura and I need to be there, we can be available, because we're all about having that kind of connection with each of you. And just thank you for being here. This is a series. This has been the 4th in our series. Our next series, our 5th webinar, will be on May 10th. At this same time, 10 a.m. Pacific. Stand by. We have a very exciting guest speaker that we're looking to confirm and topic. So look forward to hopefully seeing you all back then. And I wish you all the best and the rest of your day. Plan your time. Use it wisely. Thanks so much for being here, Laura. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan Marie.
This is fun.
Yeah, I appreciate you.